All right, take two of this rehearsal. So hopefully we get a better connection on this stream. So this is one of the stupidest articles that I have ever come across. And I think the way it is written is to drum up empathy within you, make you feel sorry for these people. But really, we're going to question a lot of the things in this article, especially the type of people that are doing these protests essentially against higher interest rates, if you can believe it. This is the level of insanity that we have now got to in this denial phase. You literally have people protesting about higher interest rates. So let's take a look, see what's going on. They purchased homes right before the real estate downturn. Now they're struggling to close. Okay, so who's responsible for that? Whose fault is that? Well, it's certainly not us, the taxpayers' fault. And it's not our fault that they bought at the top. I mean, the risks were inherently there. And it was obvious to even a 10-year-old, if you showed them a chart, that at some point this thing was going to come back down. I think, at least, maybe it wasn't. Maybe people just thought this was going to go on forever, like some sort of rocket ship going to Mars. But the thing is, which is really, really interesting, is note how they try and make you feel sorry for these people in the article. And, you know, I guess we should feel some sort of empathy for them, but it shouldn't be like we feel a responsibility or duty ourselves to then go bail them out. So, okay, so they all said they are having trouble getting financing due to the sudden real estate downturn brought on primarily by the Bank of Canada raising interest rates in an effort to tame inflation, which has sent mortgage rates skyrocketing and home values plunging. And again, you know, you have to really think this through. And the reality is, it's not just a case of the Bank of Canada is the person that you blame. Because if you really think about what's happened, it's been more than just them raising interest rates. I mean, think about the massive rise in real estate prices that we have seen over the past couple of years. I mean, that is bound to cause a level of inflation. Even the Bank of Canada accepts that there is this thing called the wealth effect. And that wealth effect is essentially when asset prices rise, it makes people feel more confident and richer, even though they're not. It's just their paper value, their paper net worth is going up. It's not reality, but it makes them feel more confident. And then they go out and spend more money into the economy. What does that do? It creates more inflation, especially if you've got supply chain bottlenecks and all kinds of different things going on. And that is exactly what we have seen during the past 2 years that's been a lot of the inflation that we have seen. And, you know, I think it's really interesting because these people are pointing at the Bank of Canada like they are the arsonists, when it's really them themselves. It's those people that are directly responsible for the inflation that we see. The people who bought into this bubble and just wanted to buy into it until, of course, the prices started coming back down, and then they're like, okay, I don't want to buy anymore. It's just utterly ridiculous. And, you know, if we continue looking at this, it gets even more stupid. So those that do qualify are being offered hundreds of thousands of dollars less than the amounts that they're on the hook for because of appraisal values have fallen dramatically over the past 10 months. Existing mortgage rates would mean unaffordable payments, they say. Now, I warned of this as well. I said that this is going to happen. Basically, you have banks that will appraise values up when prices are rising. That's because they're thinking, hey, the prices are going up, so we can appraise the value higher because the chances are that prices are just going to rise and they'll be there within 3-4 weeks or even within the closing date that this person is going to have. Well, that works in the opposite fashion on a downturn because you have the banks essentially appraising values down. And it makes things a lot worse because people can't close. Things like this happen. But the real estate industry, They don't tell you this. They don't tell you about the risks involved when you buy real estate. It's all about the upside. That's all it's ever about. I mean, mortgage brokers the same way too. And the whole industry is just bad in a way that the buyers just are not educated enough on the risks. And that is part of the problem, I think, massively, because people just don't have a clue what they're getting into. They don't know to ask the right questions. Like, everybody isn't thinking critically like we're thinking. So you have to kind of think of that too. It's not like we all think that they should know all these different questions, because most people just don't, and they are largely asleep in the way that they think. So first-time homebuyer Gutcharan Rihal agreed in October 2021 to pay $1.959 million plus $90,000 in upgrades, so over $2 million, for a single-family detached home that would house himself, his wife, their 2 children, and his mother. Again, when they're going into that level of detail, they're doing that for a reason. It's to make you kind of feel sorry for them. And I'm not sure if that's right or wrong. You can make that decision better than I can on an individual level. So we thought if we live hand to mouth, we can still afford it. Rihal, an Uber driver who also earns income as a property manager and from a business in India, told CBC News. So I question this because, again, you've got the fact that this guy is an Uber driver and he's buying a $2 million home. And some people will say, well, Luke, he has this income from India. What are you talking about? Well, the thing is, there's no way of a Canadian financial institution verifying that income in India. There's no way of them doing that. So essentially, obviously, he's going to probably have to provide some documentation that he's getting that income, but nobody really knows where that income is coming from. You know, he could essentially just fraudulently get documents that show his income is coming from selling, you know, I don't know, pet accessories. It could be anything, right? When it could be something like money laundering, a case like that. So there's a huge question mark over that. And I'm not saying that this guy in particular is doing that. I don't think he is. But this kind of exposes the banks in a certain way of how they look at risk when they make these loans. And how is that mortgage then going to be valued if he got it? Obviously, in this case, he's not even going to get the mortgage because he hasn't got the money to close. But let's say he did get the mortgage, because that was happening in 2021. That was happening in 2020. You had the same type of buyer. In fact, I read a story about 18 months ago about an Uber driver in Vancouver. Yeah, another Uber driver in Vancouver who got a private mortgage based off the fact he said he was going to rent out his basement. So that's all well and good because he's getting that income from renting out his basement. But what happens when he can't rent out his basement anymore? Again, these risks, the lenders just don't care when you're in a bubble. They're just like, yeah, sounds good enough to me. That satisfies all the criteria that I have, so I don't care. There's this moral hazard that are the people that sell the loans. They actually don't take any of the risk on board. So it's in their best interest to get you to sign up. It's in their best interest to get you that loan so they can get their commission check. And that is how you have such a broken financial system when you have all these things in place. And it's the same with real estate agents. For most of them, they're just a moral hazard. They just want to sell you that house. They want to sell you that FOMO, you know, and the reason is because they are earning money from that. Don't get me wrong. There are great realtors out there, but they are a tiny, tiny percentage. And the best time to look for a realtor is in a downturn, by the way, because a realtor like Scott Walters, for example, is going to tell you to wait, whereas a garbage realtor is going to tell you to buy. So I think that's really important because you can be looking right now for at least a decent agent. So with his closing date approaching next month, he's been so far unable to secure a mortgage, obviously. An appraisal recently estimated the home's value at $1.7 million, $300K less. So really is a lot. and coming up with hundreds of thousands of dollars to cover the difference upon closing, in addition to the $260,000 down payment he's already made, and making exorbitant monthly payments is something his family simply can't afford. Me and my wife, I think we haven't slept for the last 3 months, said Rihal. Our kids, they can see the stress on me and my wife's face. So you know what? And they are really trying to get you to be emotional. But let's flip this to the other side of the page, which is all these buyers that haven't been able to buy because of the real estate prices just continually going up. So they've had to rent because essentially of this bubble and because of the distortions in the financial system, the artificially low interest rates. So you've had all these first-time home buyers that can't buy. You know, they've got kids, they've got wives, they want to buy housing. So, you know, let's just not focus on the people here who are essentially the ones that got caught up in the bubble and now they're about to pay the price for it. In my opinion, if they don't pay the price for it, then guess what? They're going to make that mistake over and over again. And especially when you see housing protests like we're seeing, where people are literally protesting and saying the Bank of Canada did this to me, then they are literally the idiots, really, because unfortunately they're not going to learn from the mistakes that they made. They're doomed to make those mistakes again. I mean, it's the same like in financial markets, as if you buy a stock, it goes down, and then you blame the company when it was really you. The company didn't go into your brokerage account and force you to buy that stock. And you know, the thing is, people just love to blame other people. And it's not surprising that we live in this type of society right now. And it's quite frankly alarming because it's been created by corrupt politicians who refuse to take any sort of ownership for the massive issues that they have created, because they simply cannot go through any, let the economy go through any form of pain. And it does drive me a little mad, because it's because of that we see the huge issues that we see in a lot of cases. Okay, so I'm going to show you this, which I believe is massively, massively important. And it is from Justice Queen on Twitter. So she has actually exposed a lot of the people here in this, and I can't believe this. I thought it was going to freeze again. Exactly the same point. This is such an important point in the stream. And you can see that a lot of these people, they work in the banking industry, they work in construction, they work in real estate. So these are a lot of the people who are essentially causing the problem, because these are the moral hazard that we have that have caused a lot of the problems. And now they are turning around and they're saying, oh my God, we need the bailouts, we need to stop the interest rate hikes, we need to stop everything. And that just kind of shows, I think, the level of hypocrisy that we are seeing, like the hypocrisy that we are seeing right now. But it doesn't surprise me. And they're well within their right to go and protest. And we're well within our right to say, hey, this is stupid. So anyway, it's the way the world works, and they can call me stupid too. That's totally fine. So anyway, I want to show you this, and I've showed this many, many times, but this is essentially the bubble phases. And essentially, you know, when you see this type of behavior, it is really inherent of the fact that we're in a denial phase in the bubble, in my opinion. When you have people who are just totally in denial about everything that's going on, it's not my fault, I'm not taking ownership for this issue, then really you're in that denial phase of the bubble, in my opinion. And, you know, it's just funny. You know, I mean, what Canada did back in 2008, essentially, if you imagine the credit was like, you guys call them faucets, in England we call them taps, you know, but you turn the taps on and the water that is coming out of the tap is credit. That is your credit flow. And in the US, they had the taps wide open, and that led to 2008. And then essentially Canada had the taps open a little bit, they hit some big bumps in the road, and their response to that was, let's just open the taps up like the US did. Oh God, it is just unbelievable. But that is essentially a bad way of describing what has happened in 2008 to get to where we are right now. Essentially, just do the same thing, repeat the same mistakes. It's absolutely mad. And shout out to Justice Queen on Twitter, because she, wherever she got that from, fantastic for actually digging up the dirt on these guys. I've linked the tweet in the description. I've linked all the articles as well. And I will see you guys in the next one. If you've enjoyed this one, you might like this one here. You might also like this one here. Thanks for bearing with me. I know I've had connection issues. I hope this stream worked, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.